The wind whispered that night, carrying the echoes of a forgotten story, one that dates back millennia. In the heart of a land marked by ancient civilizations and profound mysteries, a secret lay hidden in the shadows. Imagine a realm where the boundaries between the human and the divine blurred, a place where beings of great stature and strength, known as Nephilim, walked the earth. Have you ever wondered what they truly were, what knowledge they possessed, and how their existence shaped the world we know today? In the twilight of night, let our imagination roam as we journey to the sands of time, where pyramids rose in their majesty, silent witnesses to the universe's secrets. These monuments, which still intrigue archaeologists and historians today, are not merely stone structures, but portals to a past filled with enigmas. The last Nephilim king, as he was known, ruled a kingdom of splendor, surrounded by mysteries that defied human comprehension. Who was he? What powers did he possess? And why does his legacy remain hidden in the mists of history? The sun slowly set, painting the sky red and orange as darkness began to settle in. The temperature dropped, bringing a slight chill to the air, which seemed to whisper promises of revelations. In the surroundings, shadows danced, cast by ancient structures, and the distant sound of a flowing river echoed the rhythm of life that once pulsed there. Imagine yourself walking through this landscape, feeling the dust of the earth beneath your feet, the gentle breeze caressing your face. The aroma of spices from the nearby market, blended with the scent of surrounding vegetation, brings a sense of connection to these ancient times. You see the ruins of a temple, its columns still standing, witnessing the passage of centuries. With each step, history unfolds, revealing layers of knowledge and power. Just like the Nephilim, who were considered giants in stature and wisdom, humanity has always sought to understand what lies beyond the visible. These beings, described in ancient texts as sons of gods and daughters of men, were more than mere legends. They were the embodiment of a lost era, where the boundaries between the human and the divine were not so clear. What made them so extraordinary? Their immense height? Their supernatural abilities? Or the knowledge they possessed about the earth and the heavens? As we reflect on this, a vivid picture begins to form in our minds, bringing forth images of a world where the supernatural and the natural coexisted. Throughout history, countless cultures have shared accounts of beings similar to the Nephilim. From the giants of Greek mythology to the gods of Norse mythology, the stories echo across civilizations. How can this be merely a coincidence? This connection between different cultures suggests a global pattern, an enigma that demands our attention and reflection. Why do so many civilizations speak of beings who descended from the heavens, who brought knowledge and, at the same time, caused destruction? As night deepens, let us imagine a scene in a vast hall, where the last Nephilim king sits on his throne, adorned with gold and precious stones. His gaze is powerful, and his presence intimidating. He speaks in an ancient tongue, a language few can understand, but the essence of his words resonates with all. He is the guardian of ancestral knowledge, capable of shaping the destiny of nations. What could this knowledge be, and why did he choose to keep it secret? The presence of his words resonates with all. He is the guardian of ancient knowledge, capable of shaping the destiny of nations. What could this knowledge be? And why did he decide to keep it a secret? As we continue our journey, let us reflect on the consequences of such power. What happens when beings endowed with extraordinary abilities become part of everyday life? Fear, respect, and adoration coexist, creating a complex relationship between the ruler and his people. The last Nephilim king was not just a leader, he was a symbol of hope and terror. A being whose mere presence was enough to alter the course of history. The story of the last Nephilim king is marked by challenges and revelations. As he moved among mortals, his legacy became increasingly opaque, as if the very stones of his constructions began to whisper secrets that would be lost to time.
The pyramids, which once gleamed under the sun, became monuments of an era few understand, preserving within their walls the echo of voices that cry out for recognition. Imagine the nights when he contemplated the stars, wondering about the future of his people and the purpose of his existence. With each constellation that shone above, a new question arose in his mind. What will be lost in the passage of time? What will be forgotten?
The answer to these questions may lie buried beneath the desert sands or hidden in ancient texts, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, as we are together in this exploration, I invite you to relax and release any tension you may be accumulating. Feel the weight of your body sink gently, as if you are connecting to the earth beneath your feet. Breathe deeply and allow each exhalation to carry away any worry or distraction. This is the moment to open yourself to the mystery that surrounds us, to delve into the stories that have shaped our lives, and continue to influence us in ways we do not yet fully comprehend. As night progresses, the stars grow brighter, illuminating our path as we continue the search for answers. The last Nephilim king and his legacy remain in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. And so, as we embark on this journey, remember, each mystery we unravel brings us closer, not only to the truth about the Nephilim, but also to our own stories, which are intertwined with theirs. The night was enveloped in an almost mystical silence, interrupted only by the whisper of the wind passing between the stone columns of the temple. The stars shone intensely in the sky, like curious eyes observing the earth below. In the center of that ancient city, where the last Nephilim king had once ruled, the atmosphere was charged with a palpable energy, an echo of power that seemed to reverberate through time. Every stone, every fragment of that monumental structure told a story, and it was necessary to listen to them. The legend of the last Nephilim king was like a delicate thread, weaving itself through the events of history. He was not merely a ruler. He was a being of immense wisdom and strength, a hybrid of human and divine, who possessed the power to influence the destiny of nations. The records, though scarce, spoke of his impressive height and superhuman abilities. But more than that, he was known for his secret knowledge, an ancient wisdom that allowed him to govern with justice, but also with awe. They say he had access to technologies and knowledge that, by the standards of the time, were almost magical. What many would consider sorcery, he saw as advanced science, an understanding of the cosmos and its workings. The Nephilim, as a race, were endowed with abilities that defied the laws of nature, and the last king, in particular, seemed to have mastered aspects that were beyond common human comprehension. What did he know? What were the secrets he guarded so closely? These questions lingered in the minds of those who dared to explore the ruins. As night advanced, a group of explorers illuminated the temple with lanterns, their flickering lights dancing on the aged stone walls. They were researchers, each with a goal: to uncover the mysteries surrounding the last Nephilim king. They sought answers to questions that had been asked for generations but remained unanswered. The anticipation in the air was palpable, almost as if the temple itself was waiting to reveal its secrets. One of the archaeologists, a woman named Thara, felt a deep connection with that place. She examined every symbol carved into the walls, every hieroglyph that might contain a clue about the existence of the Nephilim. Thara was known for her keen intuition and her passion for unraveling the unknown. For her, every fragment of history found was a piece of the puzzle that could lead to the truth about the Nephilim and their legacy. While the others focused on the excavations, Thara moved away slightly, feeling the need to be alone with her thoughts. She made her way to a more remote part of the temple, where the shadows were denser and the presence of the past more intense. There, amidst the silence, she began to meditate, allowing her mind to calm and connect with the energy of the place. "Welcome, Thara," a soft voice whispered, seeming to come from within the walls. It was a strange sensation, as if the temple was responding to her presence. "You seek answers, but remember, not all truths are ready to be revealed." There was no one around her, but Thara felt a current of energy pulsing through the space. It was as if the echoes of history were converging, bringing forth the memories of those who had walked there before. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath,
allowing the ancestral wisdom to flow through her. Visions began to emerge in her mind. She saw the last Nephilim king in his majesty, seated on an adorned throne, surrounded by advisors and warriors. There was an air of reverence around him, and Thara could feel the respect everyone held for this extraordinary being. But, at the same time, there was a palpable tension, as if the magnitude of his power was about to be challenged.
The image of great priests, clad in long robes, crossed their minds, performing ceremonies that linked mortals with celestial beings. The last Nephilim king, with his imposing stature and aura of power, walked among them, his presence a symbol of strength and mystery. What made him so respected and feared? What secrets did he hold that placed him among mortals, yet still so distant from them? In the gloom of the temple, an altar crafted from massive stone still displayed traces of offerings, dried flowers, and ceramic fragments used in sacrifices. It was there, in this sacred space, that deities were invoked and where the Nephilim king sought wisdom in his dreams and visions. He was an intermediary, a link between humans and celestial beings, and his stature was not just physical, but also spiritual. Ancient records spoke of his immeasurable wisdom, which was passed down through generations, and his name was whispered with respect and fear. However, over time, his kingdom began to lose him. The winds of change blew across the land, bringing new ideas and beliefs that threatened his dominion. The rise of rival civilizations, such as the Egyptians, brought a new era of gods and practices, diluting the power of the ancients. The last Nephilim king, perceiving the changes, became reclusive, seeking in the depths of hidden knowledge the true essence of what it meant to be a Nephilim. V9. The power of the ancients waning. The last Nephilim king, sensing the changes, became reclusive, delving into the depths of hidden knowledge to uncover the true essence of what it meant to be a Nephilim. The nights were long and dark, and he spent hours meditating under the stars. The constellations glowed intensely in the gloom, as if observing his thoughts and laments. He wondered if his legacy could be preserved, or if history would forget him, just as it did many others. The voices of his ancestors echoed in his mind, reminding him that true power lay not just in conquering, but in understanding. Legends of his deeds spread, and whispers of his existence became troubled and exaggerated tales. Future generations began to see him not as a king, but as a mythical figure, an ebony giant who walked among the shadows. What was once reverence transformed into fear, and fear bred legends that distorted the truth. He knew he needed to act to ensure his people would not fall into the darkness of oblivion. One night, while observing the horizon, the Nephilim king had a vision.
He saw a great flood, a cataclysm that would sweep across the lands and cleanse the corruption that had spread among men. Images of destruction and rebirth danced before his eyes, and he understood that his time was running out. The destiny of his people and his lineage depended on his immediate actions. With a heavy heart, he decided he would need to find a way to preserve the knowledge and legacy of the Nephilim. The wise men of his kingdom were summoned for a secret meeting. By the flickering torchlight on the temple walls, the king shared his apocalyptic vision and his plan to preserve wisdom. He ordered that the ancient texts, which contained teachings on metallurgy, astrology, and the occult sciences, be copied and hidden in a safe place. Knowledge, he believed, was the only key to survival, and he could not allow it to fall into the wrong hands. Among the wise men, there was a young man named Kael, who stood out for his intelligence and curiosity. He had always been drawn to the stories of the ancients and the traditions that shaped his society. The king, recognizing his potential, entrusted Kael with the task of leading the team that would preserve this knowledge. Kael accepted the responsibility with determination and grit, aware of the importance of his mission. The king saw in him the possibility of a new beginning, someone who could carry the torch of knowledge for future generations. From that day on, time began to pass quickly. The wise men worked day and night, translating the texts and recording everything they could remember. Meanwhile, the Nephilim king observed the unrest of his people, feeling the pressure of approaching external forces. He knew the flood was imminent, and his soul yearned to prepare his people for the ordeal that was to come. Then, on a night of radiant moonlight, the king gathered his family and closest advisors for a ceremony in the temple. He delivered a heartfelt speech filled with emotion, calling on everyone to remember their Nephilim essence, the greatness of their history, and the importance of the knowledge they were about to preserve. He spoke of the need for unity and courage, urging each person to stand firm against the coming storms.
"We are not merely giants in stature, but also in spirit," he exclaimed, his voice echoing through the stone walls. "What defines us is not our physical strength, but what we do with our knowledge and the legacy we leave for the future. May our descendants never forget who we truly are." Kyle's eyes gleamed with determination, and a wave of hope began to spread through the room. Everyone there felt they were about to enter a new era, one that would be full of challenges, but also opportunities. The last Nephilim king looked at them, and as the torchlight danced across their faces, he knew he had done the right thing. He had sown hope amidst despair, and the story of his people would continue, even in the face of oblivion. As night advanced, the gentle breeze continued to blow, carrying with it echoes of what once was and what could be. The shadows on the temple walls seemed to dance to the rhythm of the hearts beating there, each pulse echoing the determination of a people eager to remember and honor those who came before. The last Nephilim king was ready to face his destiny, and the story was only just beginning to unfold. The introduction had an air of expectation, a mix of apprehension and fascination. Each step they took echoed like a call from history, an invitation to delve into the secrets of the past. The explorers knew that the task ahead would not be simple, but the promise of discovering what many considered lost was irresistible. As they walked through the dark passages of the temple, their lanterns cast dancing shadows on the walls, revealing ancient inscriptions that recounted the deeds of the last king. Each symbol seemed to pulse with life, whispering tales of battles and alliances, of a rule that extended far beyond the limits of what we know as history. There was something almost magical in the way the ancient master builders had worked, every detail crafted to last for eternity. One of the researchers, Thara, stopped to examine an inscription more closely. With the lantern light reflecting on her face, she could see that the marks were more than mere words. They were art. The beauty and complexity of the designs left her amazed. "Look at this!" she exclaimed, drawing the attention of the others. "These hieroglyphs speak of an alliance between the Nephilim and human beings. They were not only rulers, but mentors. What truly happened between them?" The others gathered around her, absorbing every word. What could this alliance mean?
There were rumors that the Nephilim had taught humans knowledge that allowed them to prosper, but there were also warnings about the misuse of that wisdom. The balance between power and responsibility was a theme that resonated through the ages, and the story of the last king could be a reflection of this. As they conversed, the group decided to follow a narrower corridor where the lantern light barely reached. The air was dense, imbued with an aroma of antiquity, as if time itself had condensed there. With each step, the excitement grew, and the charged atmosphere made everyone feel as if they were about to cross a threshold, the entrance to a long-forgotten world. Suddenly, something caught Kyle's attention, another expedition member. He approached a wall that looked different. The stones had a subtle glow, almost charged with energy. "Look at this," he said, low and hesitant. "These stones, they're different, as if treated somehow." The others approached, intrigued. Thara ran her hand over the surface, feeling a subtle vibration. "It's as if there's technology here we don't fully comprehend," she suggested, her eyes shining with the possibilities. "The last Nephilim king may have left something for us." Combining nervousness and excitement, the group examined the wall, searching for interaction. The profound silence amplified their breaths in the enclosed space. Finally, Marin, one of the scientists, noticed a small, almost imperceptible crack. "Perhaps if we push here, there might be a hidden mechanism." The expedition members gathered, hands on the wall, seeking the right position. With a combined effort, the stone moved, revealing a secret passage. A cold, dry wind blew from within, bringing the scent of earth and dry leaves, as if long-held secrets were manifesting. The group hesitated, absorbing the magnitude of their discovery. "Should we go in?" Thara asked, her gaze alternating between the others and the darkness forming before them. "Yes," Kyle replied, his determination evident. "We didn't come all this way to give up now." With flashlights, they passed through the opening, one by one, feeling adrenaline pulse through their veins. The new chamber was spacious, filled with soft light emanating from wall stones.
In the center, a large platform, adorned with symbols, seemed to tell a story. A battle scene with immense figures and humans coexisting, as if frozen in time. Marin approached the platform, observing details. "These aren't just Nephilim. These are the last. Those before they were forgotten. They fought forces we don't understand," he murmured, eyes widening at the magnitude. "And this, it looks like a map. It might show us where to find more artifacts or ruins." Excitement seized the group, deciphering the images. The symbols, though ancient, were charged with meaning. Suddenly, everything made sense. The last Nephilim king was not just a ruler. He was a guardian of knowledge, of wisdom transcending eras. His technology and teachings might still be found, hidden somewhere globally. The revelation brought new meaning to their mission. They were not just exploring ruins. They sought a connection to the past that could shape the future. What began as a simple archaeological expedition transformed into a journey for the Nephilim's true legacy, where each discovery could not only redefine history, but also open doors to unreached understandings. A profound journey in search of the true legacy of the Nephilim, where each significant discovery could not only redefine history, but also open doors to understandings that had not yet been fully reached. As the night deepened and the soft moonlight illuminated the ancient temple, the explorers felt closer than ever to answering the profound questions that had haunted them for generations. The last Nephilim king, with his many secrets and extraordinary abilities, was on the verge of rediscovery. And with each deliberate step, they became part of that ancient history, immortalized on the temple walls. The distinct promise of a new dawn hung in the air, and their monumental quest had only just begun. The last Nephilim king, during his solitary nights beneath the vast star-studded sky, diligently sought answers in his deep meditations. The stars, silent witnesses of countless bygone eras, seemed to softly whisper forgotten secrets to him, and he surrendered to these ethereal whispers, trying to decipher what his crucial role in humanity's grand history truly meant. The solitude was heavy, but he knew he stood at a significant crossroads. The duality of his existence, as a being of both divine and human blood, made him the constant target of incessant probing questioning. How could he, such a magnificent being, find a meaningful purpose in a world that was quickly consigning him to oblivion? In one of these moments of deep contemplation, he decided to venture beyond the temple's hallowed confines. The ancient stones forming the sacred walls seemed to vibrate beneath his feet, as if sensing his presence. He made his way to the serene river valley, a tranquil place where the murmuring of the water always brought him solace. The sounds of the river were like a soothing song, a constant reminder of life flowing incessantly, despite the changes that surrounded his kingdom. The shimmering water reflected the starlight, creating a dazzling spectacle that made him feel deeply connected to the cosmos. As he walked, the Nephilim king reflected on the captivating stories he had heard in his youth.
tales of heroes and gods who had descended from the heavens, bringing knowledge and culture to mortals. He remembered the legends that spoke of the Bene Elohim, the sons of God, who united with the daughters of men, creating a lineage that would become the foundation of his own existence. But now, these ancient tales seemed to be fading, swallowed by the new era that was emerging. The Egyptian civilization had grown in power and influence, and the ancient traditions were becoming challenging and threatening. The Nephilim king perceived the worship of old gods giving way to new cults and ideals that did not include him. He felt the weight of responsibility to protect and maintain his lineage, but a growing sense of hopelessness consumed him. It was amidst these reflections that he found a clearing where the trees parted, revealing a stunning view of the sky. He sat on the ground, covered with dry leaves, and closed his eyes, allowing the memories of ancestral voices to envelop him. "Seek knowledge, seek truth," they echoed. These words resonated in his mind, and he wondered if the answer to his crisis might be hidden within the traditions he himself had helped to shape. That night, as the wind blew softly, he had a vivid dream. In his vision, a figure of light appeared before him, enveloped in a divine aura. It was one of the ancient Watchers, beings who descended to the world to share wisdom with humanity. The entity seemed to look directly at him, its bright eyes filled with comprehension and power. "You are at a crossroads," said the figure, its voice echoing like a soft thunder.
History is not only written by those who live, but also by those who remember. "You are at a crossroads," the figure said, its voice echoing like soft thunder. History is not only written by those who live, but also by those who remember. The message was clear, but the Nephilim king still felt conflicted. He tried to understand the depth of the revelation. What did it mean to be remembered? Would it be enough for him to merely preserve the teachings of the past, or should he seek a new path, a new legacy? The luminous presence began to dissipate, taking with it the certainty he so desired. "Whatever you choose, choose with your heart," were the last words that echoed in his mind, before darkness enveloped him again. The next day, waking under the faint morning light, the Nephilim king had a new sense of determination. He realized that the answer he sought was not just in his origins, but in how he could reinterpret his role in the world. He decided he could not be a mere guardian of traditions. He should be a beacon, a bridge between what was and what could be. History did not need to be a burden, but rather an opportunity for evolution. With this new perspective, he began to move through his kingdom, seeking dialogue with mortals. He wanted to understand their hopes, their fears, and their beliefs. The intention of forging a new pact, not of subjugation, but of collaboration, began to blossom in his heart. The Nephilim king sought to create a space where ancient wisdom could integrate with new ideas, where ancestral knowledge could be the foundation for a more promising future. Days passed, and he found many who still revered the ancient gods, but also those who turned to new worship practices. He listened to the stories of warriors, farmers, mothers, and children, all interwoven into a vibrant tapestry that told the people's history. He began to perceive that, although the world was changing, the essence of humanity, its curiosity and search for meaning, remained intact. During this period of rediscovery, the Nephilim king began to organize meetings with people from different tribes and cultures. He encouraged dialogue, the exchange of ideas, and soon the river valley transformed into a space of learning and unity. He was no longer just a king. He had become a mentor, a guide who helped shape a new future, based on the wisdom of the past, but open to new possibilities.
Nights under the stars continued to be moments of introspection, but now they were accompanied by a feeling of renewed hope. The last Nephilim king understood that history was not a straight line, but a complex dance of light and shadow, where every step taken was an opportunity to reinvent oneself. The journey he had begun was no longer just about preservation. It was about the creation of a legacy that could transcend generations, where love and understanding would become the foundations of a new kingdom. And so, under that starry sky, he finally found peace. The echo of his decisions resonated through time, and in every heart he touched, the essence of what it meant to be a Nephilim perpetuated, not as a forgotten legend, but as an eternal flame of hope and connection. It resonated profoundly through the annals of time, and in every single heart it gently touched, the very essence of what it truly meant to be a Nephilim was perpetually sustained, not merely as a forgotten legend, but rather as an eternal, vibrant flame of unwavering hope and deep connection. The atmosphere was charged with palpable expectation, and the group, driven by curiosity, pressed forward, entering a space that seemed to have been forgotten by time itself. The ancient walls were adorned with clear representations of proud beings, whose characteristics were unmistakable: the Nephilim. They stood in majestic poses, as if ready to descend from their thrones and mingle among mortals. The lantern light danced over the reliefs, making the sculpted eyes appear remarkably alive, keenly observing every movement of the explorers. Thera, taking the lead, was strongly drawn to an ornate door that clearly stood out from all the others. It was made of a material she did not recognize, a unique golden hue that reflected the light in a truly mesmerizing way. Without hesitation, she pushed the door, which opened with a low creak, revealing a spacious hall whose ceiling seemed to vanish into profound darkness. In the center of the hall, an immense stone table was covered by a thick layer of dust, but the intricate outlines of symbols and designs were still clearly visible. Thera approached, resting her hands gently on the cold, ancient surface. "Look at this," she softly whispered, her voice resonating deeply in the silent, cavernous space. "It certainly looks like a meeting table. What do you suppose they discussed here?"
The others quickly joined her, examining the table with a mixture of fascination and deep reverence. There were clear marks of tools, indicating that many had gathered there, perhaps to debate important issues that affected both the Nephilim and all of humanity. One of the symbols, more prominent than the others, seemed to be a distinct seal, an emblem that represented the alliance mentioned earlier. This could potentially provide us with crucial, invaluable clues about what truly transpired between them, thoughtfully said one of the group members, Miran, his intense gaze firmly fixed upon the ancient table. If they indeed served as powerful mentors, then perhaps there was a much greater, more profound purpose for this highly significant union they forged. As they discussed, the subtle sound of a faint scratching echoed through the hall, abruptly interrupting their conversation. Everyone instantly turned, senses acutely alert, but the darkness revealed nothing tangible. A palpable tension hung in the air, as if the shadows were watching, patiently awaiting the right moment to reveal themselves. Thara, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement, firmly decided they would not let fear paralyze them. "We must absolutely continue," she affirmed, the determination in her voice breaking the profound silence. "We are so very close to discovering the full truth." The group readily agreed, and together they advanced toward a side passage that led to another corridor. With each step, the environment seemed to subtly change, as if the temple itself was a living entity, breathing and responding to their very presence. The walls were now noticeably rougher, and the air was pleasantly filled with a distinctly sweet perfume, reminiscent of wildflowers. A profound sense of tranquility gently enveloped them, sharply contrasting with the intense expectation that had accompanied them until that moment. As they walked, Thara began to deeply reflect on the teachings the Nephilim might have shared.
Had humans truly learned to master the earth and the heavens, or were there limits that should not be crossed? The many stories she had heard in her childhood about the giants were plentiful, but now, there, immersed in a space that seemed to palpably pulsate with history, these stories came to vivid life in a new and deeply unsettling way. Suddenly, the corridor dramatically opened into another grand hall, larger and more brilliantly illuminated, where a massive window revealed a breathtaking starry sky. The stars shone intensely, almost as if they were uniting with those ancient ancestral figures sculpted upon the very walls. The effect was absolutely dazzling, and for a prolonged moment, everyone fell completely silent, utterly mesmerized by the sheer beauty of that moment, almost as if they were joining those ancestral figures carved into the walls. The effect was stunning, and for a moment, everyone fell silent, mesmerized by the beauty of the moment. "It's as if they're watching us," one of the group members said, unable to tear their gaze from the sky. The feeling of connection with the ancients was palpable, almost as if the stars were whispering secrets that would transcend time. Thara, still absorbing the scene, went to the window and looked out. The view was of indescribable beauty. Majestic mountains rose in the distance, and the sound of a river flowed softly, as if nature itself was joining the history of the Nephilim. A mix of admiration and awe enveloped her. What did they see from here, she wondered, imagining the ancient rulers in their glory, observing the world they dominated. "We should record all of this," Marin suggested, taking out his notebook. "These notes could be vital to understanding our history. What can we learn from them? How did their lives shape our present?" As Marin began to take notes, Thara moved away from the window, determined to explore the site further. Every corner of the temple seemed to tell a story, and she wanted to hear them. As she touched the walls, she felt the energy of the ancients permeating the space, almost as if they were still present, guiding her. In this moment of immersion, Thara found a mural depicting a significant event, perhaps a ceremony. The Nephilim were represented majestically, surrounded by humans who appeared to venerate them. The expressions on the mortals' faces were of admiration and reverence, and the scene seemed to capture a moment of harmony between the two races. "This is incredible!" Thara exclaimed, drawing the attention of the others. "Here, we can see how the Nephilim were revered. They weren't just rulers, they were almost divine figures. What could have happened for this relationship to deteriorate?" This question hung in the air as the group tried to absorb the enormity of what they were witnessing. The transitions of power, the fragility of alliances, the lessons about human ambition, and the consequences of their actions. It was a narrative unfolding before them, rich in detail and full of warnings. As if in response to her inquiry, a gentle breeze swept through the hall, causing the lit candles to flicker. Thara had the impression that, somehow, the place was alive, trying to communicate, trying to remind them of the importance of balance, wisdom, and respect. The group decided they needed a moment of reflection, a time to digest everything they had learned so far. They sat in a circle, and Thara suggested they share their impressions of what they had discovered. As each person spoke, the atmosphere grew more charged with meaning, as if the echoes of the past were joining their words, creating a tapestry of stories that transcended time. And so, enveloped by the temple's darkness and illuminated by the stories of the Nephilim, the group began to understand that the pursuit of knowledge was not just about finding answers, but also about respecting the stories that shaped the world they inhabited. In that moment, the past was not a mere memory, but a guide, a beacon that illuminated the path to a wiser future. The Egyptian civilization had grown in power and influence, and ancient traditions were challenged and threatened. King Nephilim realized that the worship of ancient gods was giving way to new cults and ideals that did not include him. He felt the weight of responsibility to protect and maintain his lineage, but at the same time, a growing sense of helplessness enveloped him. What could a single being do to preserve the history and legacy of an era that seemed to be disappearing into the mists of time? As he walked along the riverbank, his reflections were interrupted by a sudden movement in the shadows. A group of young people, laughing and playing, approached. They were mortals, but their vibrant energy and the innocence of their laughter brought a smile to King Nephilim's face. He hid behind a tree, watching them with curiosity. The youths were immersed in a swimming competition, laughing as they dove into the cool river waters under the moonlight. Their sight brought a glimmer of hope to the king's heart. It was youth, the vitality of life that continued to flow, regardless of the challenges he faced. He remembered that, despite the changes, the essence of humanity remained intact, the search for joy, connection, and love. However, this joy was threatened by the new order that was establishing itself, a cycle that could lead to the loss of many valuable traditions. With a deep sigh, the king decided to move away from the young people, feeling that his presence might interrupt that moment of purity. He moved away from the riverbank and walked towards the surrounding hills, where the night silence was deep and welcoming. In his mind, he pondered what he could do to ensure that the legacy of his ancestors would not be forgotten. He needed to act, but how? The memories of his ancestors and the stories that floated in his thoughts were the key, but how to bring them back to life in a world that seemed to be turning against them? That night, as the stars shone brightly in the sky, an idea began to form. King Nephilim decided that he could not act alone. He would need to gather others, those who still believed in the ancient stories and traditions that shaped their culture. He envisioned a council, a group that could help him preserve the knowledge and wisdom of the ancients. They would be wise men, priests, and even young people, like those he had seen earlier, who would have the passion to continue the struggle. With this newfound determination, he began to devise a plan. The first thing he needed to do was find those who shared his beliefs. The king knew it wouldn't be easy, as many had surrendered to the new cult that was spreading rapidly. People were moving away from the ancient temples, seeking new hopes in modern deities. But there were always those who kept the flame of tradition alive, even if only in their hearts. The next day, he summoned his closest friends and those he trusted. The temple, once full of life and worship, now seemed empty. But he knew that the power of memory could bring back those who had strayed. With a firm voice, he shared his vision. He spoke about the importance of remembering the stories of his ancestors and how they shaped not only his lineage, but all human existence. With a firm voice, he shared his vision. He spoke about the importance of remembering their ancestors' stories and how they shaped not only their lineage, but all human existence.
The meeting was intense. Some listened attentively, while others were skeptical. The Nephilim king, however, was undeterred. He recounted stories of their origins, of the stars that guided them, and of teachings passed down through generations. He spoke of the Bene Elohim's greatness and their representation. With each word, faces lit up with remembrance, and slowly the idea of a council took shape in his listeners' minds. Over time, more people joined them. The group grew, a mix of old and young, all united by a common cause. They gathered under the moonlight, sharing stories and experiences, while the Nephilim king guided them. The once abandoned temple began to vibrate with the energy of hope. Traditions revitalized. One night, as they gathered, a young man stood to share a story from his grandmother. It was about an ancient artifact, an amulet said to invoke ancestral strength. He described how the amulet had been lost during an ancient war, but many believed it remained hidden in a sacred place. The Nephilim king was intrigued. Finding an artifact that could connect his people to the past seemed a golden opportunity. He realized this could be key to uniting his group and strengthening its connection to their roots. Together, they could not only remember the past, but also bring back the teachings to guide the new generation. Inspired, the king decided they should begin the search for the amulet. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but their determination was powerful. The group began planning,
dividing into teams to explore regions for clues about the lost artifact. Their ancestors' stories became their compass, and the hope of rediscovering the amulet rekindled the flame of a fading culture. As the search for the amulet intensified, the Nephilim king realized true power lay not in the artifact, but in unity and collective memory. Every story told, every teaching shared, was a step toward preserving their identity. He saw himself not just as a king, but as a guardian of a legacy that, though threatened, could be restored. Their journey was not merely a search for the past, but an affirmation that even in changing times, roots could be replanted and culture reborn. The atmosphere was charged with expectation, and the group, driven by curiosity, moved forward, entering a space forgotten by time. The walls were adorned with representations of lofty beings, their characteristics unmistakable: the Nephilim. They stood in majestic postures, as if ready to descend from their thrones and mingle with mortals. Lantern light danced over the reliefs, making the sculpted eyes appear alive, watching the explorer's every move. The lantern light danced over the reliefs, making the sculpted eyes seem alive, watching every move of the explorers. Thara, taking the lead, felt drawn to an ornate door that seemed to stand out from all the others. It was made of a material she didn't recognize, a golden hue that reflected the light in a mesmerizing way. Without hesitation, she pushed the door, which opened with a low creak, revealing a vast hall whose ceilings disappeared into darkness. In the center of the hall, an immense stone table was covered by a layer of dust, yet the outlines of intricate symbols and designs were still visible. Thara approached, resting her hands on the cold surface. "Look at this," she whispered, her voice reverberating in the silent space. "It looks like a meeting table. What do you think they discussed here?" The others joined her, examining the table with a mixture of fascination and reverence. There were tool marks, indicating that many had gathered there, perhaps to debate issues affecting both the Nephilim and humanity. One of the symbols, more prominent than the others, appeared to be a seal, a kind of emblem representing the alliance mentioned earlier. "This might give us clues about what really happened between them," said one of the group members, Miran, his gaze fixed on the table. If they were mentors, perhaps there was a greater purpose for this union. As they discussed, the sound of a faint scratching echoed through the hall, interrupting their conversation. Everyone turned, senses alert, but the darkness revealed nothing. It was a moment of tension, and the silence was almost palpable. Then, Thara, with the courage that had always characterized her, decided to investigate. "I'll go see what that was," she announced, as she advanced towards the source of the sound. The others followed her cautiously. As they approached a wall, they noticed a fissure, almost imperceptible, that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. It was as if the stone itself were alive, guarding secrets about to be revealed. Thara, with an impulse of curiosity, placed her hand in the fissure, and the stone began to glow softly. "Are you seeing this?" asked one of the members, his eyes widening in astonishment. "What's happening?" "I don't know, but it looks like something is activating," replied Thara, her voice almost a whisper of wonder. The glow intensified, and an image began to form on the stone's surface. It was a scene, a vivid representation of an encounter between the Nephilim and humans. Thara and her group watched, fascinated, as the image unfolded before them. In the vision, the Nephilim were gathered around the stone table, and an atmosphere of urgency and power hung in the air. They discussed with fervor, and their gestures were grand, as if each word carried significant weight. They could feel the tension emanating from that ancient scene, as if it were still present there in the hall. "Look how majestic they are," commented Miran, admiring the details of the figures depicted. "I never thought I'd see anything like this." The image continued to develop, showing one Nephilim in particular, who appeared to be the group's leader. He gestured expressively, and, although the words couldn't be heard, the intensity of his presence was undeniable. Thara felt drawn to him, as if there were an inexplicable connection between them. "Who is he?" Thara asked, almost to herself. "I don't know, but he seems to be someone of great importance," replied Mirren, his gaze fixed on the image. "Perhaps the last Nephilim king." "Among them." "Who is he?" Thara asked, almost to herself. "I don't know, but he seems to be someone of great importance," Mirren replied, his gaze fixed on the image. "Perhaps the last Nephilim king." As they watched, the scene began to shift, revealing a moment of conflict. The Nephilim were at odds, their faces etched with concern and anger. The tension grew, and Thara could feel the energy in the air, an echo of the emotions that Hall had witnessed millennia ago. "They were discussing something serious," one of the explorers commented, trying to understand what was happening. "It seems there was a division among them." "Perhaps this explains what happened to them," Mirren suggested, his mind teeming with questions. "If they were such grand beings, why did they disappear? What led them to this fate?" The image on the stone suddenly darkened, and a new scene began to form. This time, the Nephilim were surrounded by humans, and the atmosphere was tense. Thara could feel anxiety build within her. It was as if those moments were being relived, and she was becoming a part of them. "They're trying to make a deal," Thara said, focusing on the scene, "but it seems they're not understanding each other." Mirren nodded, observing the interaction. "It's as if there were two worldviews. The Nephilim wanting to protect the humans, and the humans distrusting them." The scene intensified, culminating in a moment of rupture, where voices turned into shouts and gestures into threats. Thara felt a shiver run down her spine. This was a painful part of history, a division that could have shaped the future of both beings. "We need to get out of here," one of the group members suggested, beginning to feel overwhelmed by the intensity of the scene. "This is too much." But Thara, still captivated by the vision, hesitated. "Wait, there's something more. I feel we're about to discover something crucial." At this moment, the image dissolved, and the stone returned to its original dull state. Silence filled the hall once more, but the feeling that something profound had been revealed lingered in the air. "We need to discuss what we've just seen," Thara said, recovering from the initial shock. "I believe this offers us a new perspective on the Nephilim and their relationship with humans." Mirren agreed, his gaze thoughtful. "If they were truly like mentors, then that changes everything. Perhaps we don't have to view them as adversaries, but as an essential part of our history." As the group gathered to discuss their discoveries, the lantern lights began to flicker, and a slight tremor ran through the floor beneath them. It was as if the very place was responding to what they had just witnessed, to the revelation of a past that still echoed in the walls, crying out to be remembered. "We need to prepare," Thara warned, her intuition sharpened. "Something is about to happen." The Nephilim king walked through the hills, deep in thought, as the night breeze caressed his face. He knew the traditions of his lineage were at risk, threatened by the new era unfolding before him. The voices of the young people playing by the riverbank echoed in his mind, reminding him of the fragility of joy and innocence. He ardently wished to find a way to transmit the legacy of his ancestors, but the answers seemed to slip through his fingers, like running water. The fragility of joy and innocence. He ardently desired to find a way to transmit the legacy of his ancestors, but the answers seemed to slip through his fingers, like running water. As he explored the familiar contours of his land, the king came upon an ancient ruin, overgrown with vegetation. Within this structure, which many had long forgotten, lay the essence of his people's history. He approached, feeling a wave of nostalgia as he saw the time-worn stones. Each one seemed to tell a story, whispering secrets of a glorious past. There, the king began to imagine how he could use the power of his lineage and his connection to the past to revive the traditions that were being lost. Sitting on one of the large stone blocks, he closed his eyes and allowed himself to be enveloped by memories. He envisioned the ceremonies that had once taken place there, the dances and celebrations under the starlight. He saw the faces of his ancestors, each carrying a part of the history that was about to be forgotten. The king knew he needed to do something, but what? An idea began to form in his mind, a way to unite the past and the present. With determination, he decided he would gather the young people of the village, those very same ones who played in the river. They were the key to reviving the traditions and, at the same time, a bridge between worlds. King Nephilim began to sketch out a plan. He would invite the young people to a ceremony that would honor the ancient gods, an opportunity to celebrate the richness of their culture. He knew that if he could touch their hearts, perhaps he could reignite the flame of ancestral knowledge that burned within his lineage. In the days that followed, the king worked tirelessly to prepare his idea. He sought out the ancient songs and dances, reviving the memories with the help of the few sages who still remembered. He also made sure that the ceremony would be held in a significant location, where the energies of the past and present could meet. By doing so, the king hoped that the young people could feel the strength of their heritage, reminding them of who they were and where they came from. Finally, the day of the ceremony arrived. The sun was setting, painting the sky in warm hues, as King Nephilim positioned himself before the gathered crowd. He could feel nervousness growing within him, but also a wave of hope. He faced the young people who had gathered, their expressions reflecting curiosity and expectation. He took a deep breath and began to speak, allowing his passion for his culture to shine through every word.
Dear young people, today we are here to honor our history, our traditions, and our ancestors. The world is changing around us, but we cannot forget who we are. Our gods and our practices have shaped who we are, and for this we must celebrate it together, he said, his voice resonating with the strength of his legacy. The young people listened attentively, and the king felt that he was reaching their hearts. He shared stories of the ancient civilization, tales of courage and love, of how they were protected by beings who walked among them. He spoke about the importance of respecting the earth and honoring the cycles of life. Slowly he saw their faces change, a light beginning to shine in their eyes as their connection with their roots deepened. The ceremony continued with dances and songs, and soon voices echoed across the hill, blending with the melody of the night. King Nephilim watched the young people surrender to the celebration, their laughter echoing like music in his ears. He felt that for a brief moment he was witnessing the future of his lineage intertwine with the past, creating a bond that could withstand time. The laughter echoing like music in his ears. He felt that for a brief moment he was seeing the future of his lineage intertwine with the past, creating a bond that could resist time. As the night advanced, the king sat at the edge of the event, observing the joy and connection blossoming before him. He realized his plan was working. The flame of tradition was beginning to shine again. He knew he couldn't reverse all the changes that had occurred, but there was a beauty in adapting and continuing the legacy. The young were learning to look to their roots, and that was a crucial step. When the moon was high in the sky, King Nephilim rose and addressed the young people once more. Today was just the beginning. We are more than simple mortals. We are the inheritance of a rich and powerful history. It is our duty to protect and transmit this heritage. Let us continue this journey together, always remembering who we are. The echo of his words provoked applause and shouts of joy. He saw in their eyes a determination that was not there before. That night, as the stars shone brightly above, King Nephilim felt he had found a renewed purpose. The connection between his people and their traditions was back, like a current intertwining between generations. He bid farewell to the young, knowing that the coming days would bring new challenges. But now he was no longer alone. He had lit a light in the darkness, and hope spread like a gentle breeze across the hills. With a heart full of gratitude, he walked back home, aware that though time changed and challenges arose, the essence of his lineage would persist. And so, as the night deepened, King Nephilim became the bridge between the past and the future, a guardian of history that would never be erased. The darkness of the hall seemed to come alive, and the group felt a shiver run down their spines. Thara, with her heart pounding, looked at the others, seeking comfort in their familiar faces. Marin was the first to break the silence. "It might have just been an animal, something that's been hiding here for centuries," he said, trying to make the situation less frightening. But even so, the tension in the air was palpable. Each of their companions seemed to be grappling with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Thara took a deep breath and decided she couldn't let fear stop them. "We are here to discover the truth. We need to move forward." With a determined gesture, she turned back to the stone table. The marks of the symbols drew her in, as if calling her to decipher their secrets. She began to lean closer, examining every detail, every carving. Marin followed her, his expression ambivalent between fascination and apprehension. "What do you see?" asked one of the women in the group, named Kael, with a trembling voice. She stood a little further back, clearly hesitant to approach the table. "I don't know if I'm ready to know what's here." Thara looked at her, trying to offer a reassuring countenance. "These symbols may give us the answer we seek about the Nephilim. It's not just about what they were, but what their presence on Earth meant." She pointed to a particular symbol, which looked like an eye enveloped in rays. "This could be a representation of their knowledge. The eye may symbolize wisdom, the ability to see beyond what is before us." He pointed to a particular symbol, which looked like an eye enshrouded in rays. "This could be a representation of their knowledge. The eye might symbolize wisdom, the ability to see beyond what is before us." Marin nodded, stepping closer to observe as well. If they were like mentors to humanity, it's possible that these symbols are linking their actions to historical events we have experienced.
Perhaps they were responsible for advancing knowledge in various fields. As they discussed, the sound of a faint scratching echoed through the hall again, now more audible and persistent. The group froze, and everyone's gaze turned to the darkness around them. Thara's heart pounded, seemingly deafening. "We should leave," Kael whispered, anxiety in her voice. "Wait," Marin said, raising a hand. "We need to see what it is. We can't let fear control us." He turned towards the sound, and the others followed, hesitantly. Thara, feeling adrenaline surge through her veins, agreed. "Let's go together then." Carefully, they began to move towards the source of the sound. Each step echoed in the reverberating space, as if the ancient structure itself was listening and waiting. The darkness seemed to thicken, enveloping them in a cold embrace. As they neared the opposite wall, the origin of the noise was revealed. A small, almost invisible opening hidden among the rocks. It was a narrow tunnel leading out of the hall. "Perhaps it's a path that leads to another part of the complex," Marin suggested, examining the opening. "If we go this way, we might find something even more important than this." His enthusiasm was contagious, but apprehension lingered in the hearts of the others. "There's only one way to find out," Thara said, decisively. She turned to the group. "We'll split up. Marin and I will go through the tunnel. Kael and the others stay here and examine the table more closely. We'll communicate using signals, and if we find anything, I promise we'll return immediately." Kael looked uncertain. What if something happens? Her voice was low, but fear was present in her eyes. Sara, sensing her hesitation, tried to reassure her. "If we're together, we can handle anything. Trust me." With a determined look, Mara nodded, and together, Thara and he squeezed through the tunnel. The walls were hard and cold, and the space felt cramped. The darkness was almost total, but the light from their lanterns guided them, casting dancing shadows around. As they advanced, the sound of their breaths mingled with the echo of their footsteps, creating a symphony of nervousness and expectation. After a few minutes, the tunnel began to open up, revealing a wider space. The smell of dampness and earth mingled with the dense air. Thara focused on each step, the lanterns illuminating what appeared to be a hidden chamber.
In the center, a large altar-like structure was exposed, with more symbols carved into its surface. It was more elaborate than anything they had seen so far. "Look at this," Marin exclaimed, pointing at the structure. "This could be what the Nephilim used for rituals or gatherings." The excitement in his voice was palpable. Thara approached, feeling an almost electric energy around the altar. She leaned in, observing the fine details and inscriptions that seemed to tell an untold story. "These marks, they are linked to the symbols we saw on the table. It seems like it was a place of worship or veneration," Thara said, her eyes shining with emotion. "We might have found the true essence of what the Nephilim represented." As they made their observations, a profound silence enveloped the chamber. Thara couldn't help but feel that they were being watched, as if ancient and wise entities were attentive to every movement. Fear and excitement collided within her, forcing her to question what she was truly about to discover. Marin, absorbing the magnitude of the sight, said, "If this place was so significant to them, it could contain answers about their destiny, their downfall, or even what happened after the flood." The idea that they were about to unravel mysteries that had endured for millennia was almost overwhelming. Thara nodded, determined to find the answers they so eagerly sought. "Let's examine every detail. This place could be the key to understanding everything." And so, under the flickering light of their lanterns, they delved deeper into the history and mysteries the Nephilim had left behind. The Nephilim king sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the decision he was about to make. The idea of gathering the village youth for a ceremony was not just a symbolic gesture. It was an attempt to rekindle a spirit that had been stifled by time and by the new influences emerging. He could feel resistance in his heart, but he also felt a flame of hope. The young were the promise of the future, and by summoning them, he sought not only to honor the ancient gods, but also to plant the seeds of knowledge in a new generation. With this determination in mind, the king began to outline the details of the ceremony. He envisioned an open space, under the starry sky, where everyone could feel the vital energy of nature around them. The chosen location was a forest clearing, surrounded by tall and imposing trees that seemed to watch over the village's activities. There, the whisper of the wind would play an important role, carrying the voices of ancestors and gods. He decided that the ancient rituals, which had been practiced by his ancestors, should be reactivated. There were dances, songs, and stories that needed to be retold, as a way of connecting the young with their roots. The king knew it would not be easy. Many of the young people were more interested in the novelties of the modern world than in the traditions that were once fundamental to their people. But he believed that if he could awaken their curiosity and pride in their heritage, perhaps he could inspire them to accept their history. In the days that followed, the Nephilim king began to speak with the village youth. He found them by the river where they used to play and began to narrate the stories of their ancestors. He spoke of the great deeds of his predecessors, of the legends that shaped the culture and identity of his people. Initially, reactions were hesitant. Some young people looked at him with indifference, while others showed cautious curiosity. But as the stories unfolded, a sparkle began to appear in their eyes. One afternoon, as the sun set, the king decided it was time to hold a small rehearsal of the ceremony. He invited the young people to gather in the clearing and began to teach them some of the traditional dances. At first, the steps were clumsy and nervous laughter echoed through the air. But soon, the energy of the dance began to take over. With drums beating in the background, the young people discovered the rhythm, and joy began to flow among them. The king watched, satisfied, as their connection to their roots strengthened. To take hold. With drums beating, the young people found rhythm, and joy flowed. The king watched, satisfied, as roots strengthened. The ceremony night arrived. Torches flickered in the gentle breeze, lighting the clearing.
Dressed in traditional attire, faces radiant with excitement and nervousness, the young people stood ready. King Nephilim, in ceremonial robes, felt his responsibility. He breathed deeply and with a firm voice began. First, he thanked ancient gods, invoking blessings upon the village and youth. He sought wisdom, protection, connecting with ancestors. Then he narrated the Nephilim people's history, from origins to challenges. His words flowed like a river, carrying audience to past epochs where gods walked among men and the world held mysteries. Engaged by narrative and ceremony's magical atmosphere, the young people moved in unison. Music began. Instantly, the clearing became a sacred space. They danced, imitating ancestral gestures, and energy vibrated with ancient force. King Nephilim's heart warmed, witnessing transformation. As the ceremony continued, the king shared generational teachings. He spoke of community, respect for nature, and preserving ancestral knowledge. He urged them to integrate these lessons daily, ensuring ancestors' legacy wouldn't be lost to time. Each word carried weight. He saw the young people absorbing everything. At the ceremony's close, unity filled the clearing. The young people, more aware of their heritage, gathered in a circle around the king. They shared impressions, hopes, and what the night meant. The connection, once fragile, strengthened, as if an invisible line united all present. King Nephilim felt gratitude. He knew he'd taken a crucial step to ensure traditions would not just survive, but prosper. He looked at each young face, realizing that despite an uncertain future, their stories had renewed possibility to continue. With birdsong announcing morning and first light appearing on the horizon, King Nephilim promised he would continue to guide them, recount stories, and nurture the flame now shining brightly. It was the hope of a new beginning, a rebirth of traditions that had long lain dormant, awaiting the right moment to re-emerge. The sound of a faint scratching echoed through the hall, now more audible, as if someone moved in the shadows. The group stopped abruptly, tension hanging thick in the air. Thara's heart raced faster. Before she could react, Marin, always the bravest, took the lead. He pulled out an ancient lantern from the hall's corner and lit it, illuminating the dark walls and their carved inscriptions. Always the bravest took the lead. He pulled out an old lantern which he had found in the corner of the hall and lit it, illuminating the dark walls and the inscriptions carved into them. The lantern's light danced, casting shadows that seemed to come alive. Thara observed the faces of her companions.
Marin's determination was contagious, but doubt still lingered in Kael's eyes, who remained withdrawn. "We cannot let fear guide us," Marin said, his voice firm yet gentle. "We are here in search of the truth, and the answers are closer than we think." Thara approached the stone table once more, drawn by the symbols that seemed to pulse under the lantern's light. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of marks that intertwined intricately. "These are not just symbols, they tell a story. Each line, each curve seems to represent something deeper." Kael, finally moving a little closer, began to examine them like the others. "What do you think this means?" she asked, her voice a little firmer, though still carrying a touch of apprehension. "To me, this looks like a chronology of events," Marin responded, stepping closer. "We might be looking at the history of the Nephilim, or at least what they wanted us to know. If they were truly here, this could be a record of their interactions with humanity." Thara, excited, continued to examine the symbols. What if this is a warning? If they were really here to guide or even protect humanity, maybe these symbols are a way to alert us about something that is yet to come. "A warning?" Kael repeated, her voice trembling slightly. "How can you be sure of that?" "We cannot be sure of anything," Marin said, "but we can explore. Look at these marks around the symbol Thara mentioned. They appear to be a representation of the stars and planets. Their knowledge might have been much vaster than we imagined." As Marin spoke, another sound, stronger and more distinct, cut through the silence of the hall. It was as if something was moving, but it was no longer a scratch. It was a weight shifting beneath the earth. Thara felt the floor vibrate slightly, and adrenaline coursed through her veins.
"We need to get out of here," Kyle whispered, now visibly frightened. "This doesn't feel right." "What if the answers are exactly here?" Thara insisted, her determination growing. "We cannot let fear guide us. We need to know what these symbols truly mean." Marin, noticing Kyle's hesitation, took a step towards her. "If you feel uncomfortable, you can wait outside. We will explore, but we don't want anyone to feel pressured to stay." Kyle hesitated, looking at the two of them, and finally nodded. "I'll be fine. I just want to make sure you two are safe. Call me if anything strange happens."
With a brief smile, Mirren turned back to Thera. "Okay, let's focus. What do we have here? What else can we discover?" Thera turned her attention back to the symbols. "These strokes seem to connect in some way," she said, tracing her hand over the outline of a prominent symbol, as if each one were part of a larger whole. "What we are seeing might be a kind of map, a guide for a journey." "A journey?" Mirren questioned. "Do you think the Nephilim had a path we needed to follow?" "Yes, and what if this journey leads us to discover more about them, who they were, and what they were really doing here?" Thera said, with a gleam in her eyes. "This could change everything we know." "Yes, and what if this journey leads us to discover more about them, who they were, and what they were really doing here?" Thera said, a gleam in her eyes. "This could change everything we know." However, as they spoke, the stone floor began to tremble more intensely, and the sound of shifting rocks grew louder. Thera and Mirren exchanged worried glances, and the sense of urgency grew. "We need to do this quickly," Mirren said, his voice now deeper. "Whatever is out there, it seems to be getting closer." Thera agreed, and began to examine the symbols more closely. "We need to find a pattern, something that tells us how the Nephilim related to these landmarks. If we can understand that, perhaps we can discover what they wanted us to know." At that moment, a piercing sound cut through the air, and the walls seemed to vibrate. A piece of rock above them collapsed, falling with a crash. Everyone screamed, and dust began to spread through the hall like a dense fog. "Quick, to the exit!" Marin shouted, pulling Thera by the hand. They ran toward the door, Kale following closely. But before they could reach the exit, an intense light illuminated the hall, emanating from the stone table. Thera looked back, and what she saw made her heart stop. The symbols on the table began to glow, and the marks that had previously seemed disconnected now aligned into a clear pattern, creating an image that unfolded before them. This is a vision," Thera exclaimed, amazed and terrified at the same time. "They are revealing themselves." "We can't stay here any longer," Kale shouted, but Thera was paralyzed, absorbing every detail of the image that was forming. The figures were interacting with humans in a setting that appeared to be an ancient civilization. It was as if the Nephilim were guiding, helping, and mingling with mortals. "Come on, Thara!" Marin pulled her once more, but she was mesmerized by the light emanating from the table. The glow seemed to call her name, as if the connection she felt with those beings was stronger than any fear. "I need to understand," Thara replied without moving. "This could be the answer we're looking for." The entire hall began to shake more forcefully as the image on the table became even more vivid. The symbols danced in a frantic rhythm, and a wave of energy swept through the environment, as if space itself were contorting around them. "Thara, now is not the time. We need to get out, or we'll be crushed here," Marin pleaded, pulling her back, as Cowell cowered, frightened by the intensity of the situation. But before they could take a step, an immense figure emerged from the light, seeming to take shape from the symbols themselves. The presence was so powerful that it made the air around them vibrate. It was a figure that exuded authority and wisdom. The creature's deep, penetrating gaze seemed to pierce through each of them, and Thara felt a wave of warmth wash over her, as if the being were acknowledging her quest and her courage. "You have come to me," the voice echoed through the hall, enveloped in a sound that resonated like soft thunder. The truth you seek is beyond what you imagine. Prepare yourselves for the revelation that will change everything." Thara's heart pounded, and the reality around her seemed to fade. Whatever was about to happen was something that could change the course of their lives forever. The Nephilim king realized the challenge before him was greater than he had imagined. The young people's resistance was not merely a matter of indifference. There was a profound disconnection between them and the ancestral culture he so cherished. As he spoke, he noticed that many looked towards the horizon, distracted, as if their minds were elsewhere, far from the clearing where they sat. But he would not be disheartened. With each story told, he sought to ignite a spark, a small flame that could grow into something greater.
One afternoon, while conversing with a group of young people, one of them, named Kael, finally spoke up. With a curious look, he asked, "Why should we care about what happened in the past? All of this seems so distant and irrelevant to us now." The question, though challenging, was received by the king as an opportunity. He smiled, recognizing the young man's sincerity and the validity of his questioning. "Kael," the king began, "the past is not merely a record of events that occurred long ago. It is the root of who we are. Each of us carries within us the history of our ancestors. Our traditions, our beliefs, even our struggles and triumphs have shaped who we are today. To deny this is like cutting the roots of a tree. Without roots, the tree cannot grow strong and healthy." The king's words echoed in the clearing, and he observed that, for the first time, some of the young people seemed to listen more attentively. He continued to weave the stories, illustrating how the victories and defeats of their ancestors were reflections of the battles they themselves faced in their lives. He spoke of the courage of Enoch, an ancient leader who guided his people through difficult times, and of the wisdom of ancient rituals that united people, creating bonds that transcended generations. With each new story, more young people approached, drawn by the fascinating narrative the king was weaving. He felt a change in the air, a growing willingness to listen. Thara, a young woman with a restless spirit and sharp intellect, raised her hand and asked, "But how do we know these stories are true? Can't they just be legends or fantasies we've been told?" The king paused for a moment, pondering the question. He knew that faith and traditions was often based on stories passed down from generation to generation, but he also recognized the importance of a critical eye. "It's true, Thara. Many stories may have transformed over time, but their essence, the lessons they convey, are eternal. What matters is not merely the exactness of the events, but what we can learn from them. Legends serve as guides, as reminders of what we have already overcome and what we can still conquer." The discussion deepened, and the king realized he was succeeding in instigating genuine curiosity in those young people. He proposed that, instead of just hearing his stories, they could also participate in building them. He suggested they gather to tell their own experiences, their challenges, and victories. Thus, everyone could understand that a people's narrative is not a burden to be borne, but a wealth to be shared and constantly updated. Their experiences, their challenges, and their victories. Thus, everyone could understand that a people's narrative is not a burden to be borne, but a wealth to be constantly shared and updated. In the days that followed, the clearing became a vibrant meeting point. The young people began to bring their own stories, their daily struggles, and what they had learned from them. Kael, who had initially questioned the value of the past, now spoke of his own battles to find his place in the world, and how his connection with nature helped him feel more whole. Thara shared her concerns about the future and how she felt lost amidst the pressures of modern society. The king listened attentively, absorbing each account like a new piece of the puzzle that formed the village's collective identity. He began to realize that every story, every voice, was as vital as the ancient legends he used to tell. An intergenerational connection was forming in a new and vibrant way. The dialogue that once seemed difficult now flowed naturally, allowing past and present experiences to intertwine. One night, as everyone gathered in the clearing under a star-filled sky, the king decided it was time to do something special. He summoned everyone to prepare for the ceremony he had initially envisioned. The clearing would be the perfect stage to reactivate the ancient rituals, but now with a new approach that included the young voices. The young people worked together to prepare the space. They decorated the clearing with wildflowers, creating a welcoming atmosphere that reflected the vibrant energy of youth. The king was impressed by their enthusiasm, and, increasingly, the ceremony transformed into something that not only revered the past, but also celebrated the present and the future. When the day of the ceremony finally arrived, King Nephilim felt a wave of emotion. He saw the young people dancing, singing, and sharing their stories with renewed pride. Traditions were being revitalized, not as a repetition of what had been, but as a celebration of what could be. He knew he had succeeded, at least in part, in reigniting the spirit of his culture. The connection they were forming was a testament that stories, whether old or new, have the power to shape the future.
As the night progressed, the king observed in silence, his heart filled with hope. He realized that by bringing the young people into the conversation, he had not only revitalized traditions, but also planted the seeds for a future where past and present could coexist in harmony. It was a reminder that the true strength of a people lies in their ability to learn, grow, and adapt without ever forgetting where they came from. The sound of a faint scratching echoed through the hall again, now more audible, as if something or someone was moving in the shadows. The group stopped abruptly, tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. Thara felt her heart pound even faster, and before she could think of how to react, Marin, always the bravest, took the lead. He pulled out an ancient lantern, which he had found in the corner of the hall, and lit it, illuminating the dark walls and the inscriptions carved into them. The lantern's light danced, casting shadows that seemed to come alive. Thara observed the faces of her companions. Marin's determination was contagious, but doubt still lingered in Kael's eyes, who remained withdrawn. "We cannot let fear get the better of us," Marin said, his voice firm but gentle. "We are here in search of the truth, and the answers are closer than we think." Kael, still holding back, "We cannot let fear guide us," Marin said, her voice firm yet gentle. "We are here in search of the truth, and the answers are closer than we think." Thara approached the stone table once more, drawn by the symbols that seemed to pulse under the lantern's light. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of intricately intertwined marks. "These aren't just symbols, they tell a story. Each line, each curve seems to represent something deeper." Kael, finally stepping a little closer, began to examine them alongside the others. "What do you think this means?" she asked, her voice slightly firmer, though still carrying a touch of apprehension. "To me, this looks like a chronology of events," Marin responded, drawing nearer. "We might be looking at the history of the Nephilim, or at least what they wanted us to know. If they were truly here, this could be a record of their interactions with humanity." Thara, excited, continued to examine the symbols. What if this is a warning? If they were truly here to guide or even protect humanity, perhaps these symbols are a way to warn us about something yet to come. "A warning about what?" Kael questioned, her anguish evident in her tone. If the Nephilim were powerful beings, what could be so dire that they would need to leave a warning for us? Marin frowned, deep in thought. Perhaps it's about what happened to them, or about the corruption they witnessed in humanity, something that led them to withdraw, or even a warning about what lies ahead, something we don't yet know. Thara shook her head. What if that corruption is still happening? And what if these symbols are a call for us as humanity to take action? The group fell into a reflective silence, each absorbing the weight of Thara's words. The atmosphere around them seemed to shift, as if the hall's walls were about to reveal more secrets. Marin adjusted the lantern, illuminating a symbol that seemed to stand out from the rest. "Look here. This symbol, it looks like an eye." "An eye?" Kael repeated, stepping closer. "What could that mean?"
In ancient culture, the eye often symbolizes vigilance, protection, and wisdom, Marin explained. If the Nephilim were observing humanity, it could mean they were concerned about what we were doing. So, they might be referring to something happening now? Thara asked, her gaze intensifying. If that's true, we need to understand what really happened to them. Kale took a deep breath, trying to push away the sense of panic. But how are we going to do that? It's just the four of us, in the middle of an ancient temple full of mysteries. Merim, ever the optimist, smiled. We are together, and together we are stronger. If the Nephilim left any clues, we need to examine them. We can't let ourselves be defeated. Let's then look for more symbols or messages, Thara suggested. Perhaps there's something else we can discover. The three spread out a little, moving carefully through the hall. Marin's lantern illuminated the walls, and each step echoed softly, like a whisper among the ancient stones. Thara stopped in an area where the marks seemed denser. As she approached, a strange sensation enveloped her, as if the stones wanted to share a long-held secret. "Look at this!" she exclaimed, calling Marin and Kale. "These marks, they're different from the others. They seem more urgent, as if the stones wanted to share a long-kept secret." "Look at this!" she exclaimed, calling Marin and Kale. "These marks, they are different from the others. They seem more urgent." The lantern's glow highlighted a sequence of symbols that pulsed with an almost ethereal tone. Marin approached, his eyes widening as he recognized the patterns. These seemed to represent a kind of cycle, a cycle that repeats. A cycle of destruction and rebirth? Kyle pondered. That makes sense. If the Nephilim were here, perhaps they saw this happen before. And what if they tried to teach us how to avoid these cycles? Thara added, enthusiasm growing in her voice. Perhaps they hope that we can change our destiny. Marin nodded. We need to record all of this. If we're going to find answers, we need to document every detail. While Marin wrote in his notebook, Thara continued to observe the marks. Something was forming in her mind, an idea she couldn't quite articulate yet. It was as if the inscriptions were connecting, forming a pattern she was beginning to glimpse. "Do you feel that?" she asked suddenly. "As if there's an energy here? Something calling to us?" "Yes," Marin replied, stopping writing for a moment. "It's as if the stones are alive." Kyle, still skeptical, frowned. "That might just be our imagination. We are in an ancient place, and the atmosphere can affect us." "Or it could be something very real," Thara insisted. "If beings like the Nephilim truly existed, there might be a reason for us to be here now. Perhaps we need to discover more about ourselves before we understand what happened to them," Marin said. "This might be our role, the legacy left to us." "Then let's continue," Kyle said, finally joining them with an air of determination. "We need to unravel this mystery, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." And so, as the lantern illuminated the ancient symbols and shadows danced around them, the group united with new determination. They were not merely explorers seeking answers about the Nephilim. They were becoming part of a story that stretched back millennia, a story where the lessons of the past could shape the future yet to come. The Nephilim king felt the room warming with the young people's energy, and this filled him with hope. He knew there was an intrinsic connection between the stories he told and the lives they led. Each narrative was not just an echo of the past, but a sign of the present and a beacon for the future. The change in the young people's expressions was evident. Indifference was transforming into curiosity, and curiosity into a genuine desire to understand.
Continuing his narrative, he spoke about the construction of grandiose monuments, like the pyramids, which were not just stone structures, but symbols of a people's unity and strength. Each block that rose in that desert was placed by hands that believed in something greater than themselves. They built not just for the present, but for the generations to come. Those who came before us made sacrifices and faced unimaginable challenges to ensure that we would have a place in the world. Kale listened intently, his eyes shining with new understanding.
So, all of this was a joint effort? It wasn't just kings and powerful figures, but everyone contributed? Kale's question reflected the transformation beginning among the young people. The king nodded, smiling. Exactly. What we have built today, the society we have formed, is the result of everyone's hard work and collaboration. Each of you has a role to play in continuing this story. The other young people began to liven up, asking questions and sharing their own reflections. The atmosphere in the clearing was full of energy, and the king felt that this was the night when the connection between the young people and their ancestral roots truly solidified. They were starting to understand that despite the differences they might feel, they were part of a greater whole, and this united them. As the conversation progressed, the king began to speak about the legends and myths surrounding the Nephilim, creatures that once walked among men. They were the guardians of knowledge, bringing wisdom and special abilities to those willing to listen. However, this wisdom should not be used selfishly. True power lies in responsibility and humility. He noticed that Kale seemed intrigued by this idea. He asked, "But why were they considered fallen? What happened to them?" The king took a deep breath, realizing this was a crucial question. The Nephilim represented a delicate balance between humanity and the divine. When this balance was broken, the consequences were devastating. History teaches us that power must be exercised with wisdom, not with arrogance. When we forget this, we lose what we truly are. He saw an expression of understanding on Kale's face and on the others, as if the king's words were resonating in their souls. The night advanced, and the clearing gradually filled with a magical atmosphere. The stars shone brightly in the sky, and the soft sound of the wind created a symphony with the voices of the young people. The king began to tell stories about the stars, which served as guides for travelers on dark nights. They not only illuminate our path, but also remind us that we are all connected. Just like the stars in the sky, we are part of a greater whole, and our actions have repercussions. The young people, now completely engrossed in the narrative, began to share their own stories of challenges and triumphs. Kael spoke about the pressure he felt to conform to the expectations of modern society, while others shared their personal struggles and the search for their identities. The king listened with attention and compassion, recognizing the pain and beauty of each account. He encouraged them to see that, even in their struggles, there was a thread connecting them to their ancestors. "Each of you carries a unique light," said the king, "and that light has the power to illuminate the path for others. When you connect with your history and the history of your ancestors, you not only honor their memories, but also create a legacy for future generations. Do not underestimate the impact you can have. Remember, even the smallest acts of kindness and courage can create waves of change." As he spoke, the young people began to rise, one by one, affirming their promises to reconnect with their legacy and to be agents of change. Kael, now standing with a sparkle in his eyes, declared, "I want to learn more. I want to know who I am and where I come from." The king smiled, satisfied. This is the first step of a journey that never ends. The desire to learn and grow is what makes us human. The clearing was now filled with a new kind of energy. Indifference and disconnection had given way to a shared understanding and a renewed commitment. King Nephilim understood that, despite the challenges they would still face, there was a spark of hope and determination in the heart of each of them. He concluded the night with a blessing, asking the ancestral forces to guide and protect those who were willing to embrace their legacy. When the meeting came to an end, the young people dispersed, but not before exchanging knowing glances and promises to meet again. The king remained there, watching them leave, his heart warmed by the certainty that he had planted a seed that, in time, could grow and blossom into something magnificent. He knew that the story of the Nephilim was not just a relic of the past, but a living source of wisdom that could guide future generations. In the quiet of the clearing, under the glow of the stars, King Nephilim realized that the true strength of a leader lay not only in his ability to tell stories, but in the skill to inspire others to connect with their own narratives. And so, as the night unfolded and the soft breeze passed, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, aware that the Nephilim legacy would continue to live, not only in the stones they left behind, but in the hearts of those who chose to remember.